Hello and welcome to the One More Word Pod. I am Marvin Williams. I'm not 6'9". I was not the second pick in the draft for the Atlanta. What were they called? The Atlanta Hawks.
They're still the Atlanta Hawks.
They're still Atlanta Hawks, which is going to be important later. And but yet and still, I'm here with you, joined as always by my most incredible, amazing, superbly indubitable, incredible, over the top producer, who, even though he's not necessarily 6'4", he's probably pretty close to 6'4", and but he was not the third overall pick for the Atlanta Falcons in their draft. But he was the ACC Player of the Year twice. Matthew Alowich, Octavius Orenthal, Gerard Ryan, the fifth, a half, third, fifth, and seventh, and sixth, seven, and eighth.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? We are here. We're shooting this episode a little later than usual because real life got in the way for both of us. I know several dozen of you are waiting with bated breath to hear what we're talking about this week. I am also waiting with bated breath to figure out what we're talking about this week because I texted Marvin an hour before we were supposed to take, not even an hour, 15 minutes before, because I trust Marvin to, basically lay the outline. I'm here to push the buttons and say a joke every once in a while. That's kind of been the routine for most of the past 11 years. I used to overproduce, but now as a man in my 30s, I'm like, I can just let it rip and we're going to do whatever. And I was sent something that was akin to a riddle. It wasn't a riddle, but it was akin to a riddle. So, Marvin, what are we talking about this week?
So today, we're going to answer an 11-year question. Matthew asked me a question 11 years ago, and I'm finally going to answer it for him today. So you're going to be here. You're going to witness that. It's going to be great. We're going to talk about when a bubble is not a bubble. We're going to talk about more of an ancient Sumerian text that has been decoded and how it's relevant for us today, especially as sports fan and as people, because that's very important. And we're going to talk about franchises who win the lotto dream home and still make it a failure. And that's where we're going to start. NASCAR, for what it's worth, getting it right. They started events back. They're going to start having events with fans back. But even to the social side of it, with recognizing the murder, the death of George Floyd, Daryl Bubba. Oh, I'm going to get his name wrong. Daryl Bubba Wallace Jr. How is that not a NASCAR name? Right? Thank you. Daryl Bubba Wallace Jr. Wearing an I Can't Breathe t-shirt. NASCAR acknowledging with the moment of silence George Floyd and his family and their loss. And I was watching this because I'm a NASCAR geek now, thanks to She Was Brilliant and Beautiful, who turned me on to it. She's been a fan forever. And I realized NASCAR would probably have been the very last, one of the very last sports that I would have associated with social awareness, with any semblance of racial efforting for equality. And then I realized how dumb I was by thinking that. A lot of people of all ilks, of all races, watch NASCAR. So it's not like there's this odd thing of like, only, white people from the South who live in trailers and drive trucks and have 5 first names watch NASCAR. And I realized how stupid I was because it really hit me thinking about, okay, yes. There's never a great number of NASCAR drivers of color. Okay, fine. But NASCAR has made the effort. We talked about this back when we were doing a show in Brooklyn, how they were going out to these Division I, Division II programs and recruiting athletes to be the pit people, and a lot of them are men and women of color. And all the other efforts that they've done for minority ownership and things like that. And I thought to myself, I cannot believe how much of a ball I've dropped on it just with my lack of awareness for NASCAR. So props to NASCAR, tip of the head. And, just really, for some reason, it really hit me this weekend. It really blew me away even more this weekend. With all that's going on with all these other leagues that we'll talk about in a second, NASCAR is just getting it right.
And to just to talk from my perspective, I've never been that big of a NASCAR fan. I don't know if it has anything to do with Northeast elitism. NASCAR is ostensibly a very American sport because Americans really identify with their cars. They identify with the freedom of driving.
Yep.
And that it's speed, power. That's why people love pro football. For me, it's like college sports. I didn't grow up in a town or an area or within a family where car culture or racing culture or even college culture were really that significant. I was the second or third person in my family to graduate from a university. So college culture off the rip is not something that I would have. I've always been interested by NASCAR. I've always found the business of NASCAR and the marketing of NASCAR to be very smart. They know niche marketing really well.
Oh, yes.
They've known how to diversify their base into the Northeast by making specific partnerships like the New Hampshire Speedway, doing specific things, including people like Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart, who seem more cosmopolitan than the Dale Earnhardts of the world. But even then, those guys, those athletes became stars.
Right.
And we know who they are.
Right. And it's so funny you would talk about the Q factor, right? Because, Jeff Gordon, and that's a great pull by you, of course, probably is the first person that I think from my recent memory who transcended sort of the idea of being the typical NASCAR driver. He spoke in complete sentences. He managed to get all of his sponsors into every statement ever made. But he always sounded like he was running for office too when he spoke. And so, there's a sort of I hate to say every madness, but I will say every madness about Jeff Gordon of he's your guy who gets out and drives his car fast. But if you walked into a bank and he walked up and he was the bank manager, or if he was the cashier guy at Publix or whatever, you wouldn't be like, yeah, it's Jeff Gordon. It's as opposed to all the other guys look like they'd be racing cars, running away from the revenuers, getting the bootleg liquor to where it's got to go, and except for him, he looked like the guy who's doing like the white collar crime. He's doing your taxes, right?
But that was a huge thing in the 1990s. A lot of these sports were trying to find that cosmopolitan Madison Avenue personality. Right. Football had done it, baseball had done it, basketball had done it. You think of the biggest stars in each sport, but when you look at NASCAR, you look at boxing, there was a lot of, you end up finding Oscar De La Hoya in the 90s. You find Jeff Gordon in the 90s, and both of them came with excessive amounts of baggage. De La Hoya to this day is a weird asterisk in the entirety of combat sports history because of what he's done, what he did as a fighter. And then you take a look at some of the things he's done in his personal life, and that's, immaterial to the whole. But there have been things that his personal life have dragged into him being a promoter and running a business. And if you look at Golden Boy Promotions, Marvin, I don't know how much boxing you watch as opposed to me. I've been watching it pretty much nonstop for the past 3 years. If you think of Golden Boy Promotions, there's only one real fighter, and that's Canelo Alvarez. Outside of Canelo Alvarez, there's really nobody that you think of as a Golden Boy Promotions fighter. And he's kind of fallen behind the bell curve while NASCAR hasn't. If you look at how boxing and NASCAR in terms of television have kind of ebbed and flowed, NASCAR has great distribution, works with some of the biggest networks in the world. I believe it's on ESPN now. It's got a partnership with Disney, and it still has a partnership with Fox too, right?
Right, yes.
They've also have stuff on NBC.
Yeah.
But so they have some of the major networks locked down.
Yeah.
And you look at boxing, you see HBO's completely gotten rid of boxing over the past 2 years.
Right.
And now DAZN has sunk billions of dollars into boxing and MMA. And I don't know if they'll see that net return. ESPN has sunk in hundreds of millions of dollars into the UFC, but that's a brand. That's a company. That's not one fighter, one promotion. And you look at the way that NASCAR is. NASCAR is a league, and it treats itself like a league, and the UFC treats itself like a league. And that's kind of how a lot of brands are now doing these whole, it started with the NFL and it parsed itself out into these packages, right, these broadcast packages, because that's the way how leagues will survive. Baseball still doesn't have, they have the RSNs, but that's a whole other to do.
And perfect lead in, because NASCAR gets it right with the personalities, with the culture, and they never try to cross the streams, right? So and we talked about this in the last episode, which was episode 6,478.9, right? Is that it? Because we've been
give or take.
Give or take, because we've been doing the show since 1846.
Because of an Albert Pujols home run ball that knocked us back into time.
Which one day we'll tell you guys that story. So, so NASCAR understands and I'm gonna use this phrase, and it's not meant pejoratively at all. NASCAR doesn't cross the streams between their underground economy, the economy of the people who are making the bootleg T-shirts, the embroidered pillowcases, the things like that they're making at home, and they're selling it at NASCAR events, and they bought an RV and they follow NASCAR around and they camp out, and they don't mix that market with the television market of the executive cats who are watching because they work for one of the companies being sponsors, and they're having a cookout at the house and they're watching NASCAR because NASCAR's get great television numbers, and they also don't cross that with the people who actually pay the tickets to go to the event, to go there early, to do the rides, to do the fun stuff. NASCAR, that is how you handle your business. Why cross your streams? If every market works in its ownsome, leave it in its ownsome. Just let it do its thing, get out the way. You'll never, ever lose, because if you lose, so NASCAR was able to function without fans in the stands. Why? Because they still were able to get the television market. They still were able to get their radio market, because they're on satellite radio as well as regular radio, sports radio, and they still have the bootleg market. So you lose one, guess what? You still have three legs of the table, right? So as you move the fans back, it doesn't affect the others. The bootleg market is still going to be the bootleg market or underground market, whatever you want to call it, as well as the formal marketing. So brilliant. Get it right. And you said the other league that just doesn't have a clue. Major League Baseball. What we've discussed ad nauseum what baseball means to us. We even did a special show, if I recall correctly, in our second year in Brooklyn, talking about that. We did a whole Major League Baseball. We went back to the Negro Leagues, went back to the birth of baseball, the whole nine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so last episode, or one of the last episodes, I talked about how maybe Major League Baseball is crazy like a fox. Like maybe they're gonna have all this stuff to have conversation about it because there's no off season anymore, but people are still talking about them now, which is something they didn't have before, really, with the exception of one or two players, right? So now we see them still not coming up with an agreement when they want to come back and play, how many games they're going to play, and they're fighting over how much money it is, so tone deaf to so many people who are without jobs, who just amazing to me that if I were the commissioner of baseball, I would sit the owners down and say, look, we can't keep losing, because if we keep losing, we can't compete with the NFL, so let's not try. We can't go, and I know you said you want to do an episode on this, but this for some reason, I don't know, this weekend it really bothered me to read and see all this stuff about what Major League Baseball is not doing, so unaware of what's happening in the rest of the universe, and especially their universe, because they're going to lose. They come back any later, they're going to lose out to college football and pro football. Forget the NBA playoffs, because they're going to lose that too. So really, you're going to choke yourself out. And when most people now can maybe name 15 players off the top of their head, whether they play on their team or not. And I don't mean the hardcore fans. I'm talking about the person who will look, oh, baseball's on. Let me go watch it. Let me listen to a few innings, or let me, oh, my wife watches this, so I'll do whatever. Right. So how it's just amazing to me that they could get it so wrong for so long. It's like they forgot everything that happened with the strike. It's like they forgot everything that happened when everybody found out about the steroids. It's like they forgot every time where they've had not a little dip in fan participation and in Q rating loyalty, but a precipitous dip where people left and never came back.
It's the smugness that people accuse the NFL of.
Right.
It is that smugness of, we're here, we're the brand leader, we're going to do all this. Major League Baseball has been playing from behind the eight ball since the 1970s. To the NFL, and now to the NFL and the NBA. You can even make the argument that at varying points the NHL is more culturally relevant than baseball. If you look at the rise of African-American players of color who are born in North America, you're seeing a continual dip of those going into pro baseball. And you look at the rise, baseball is a global game. There's no arguing that the global significance of baseball is as big, if not a little bit bigger than football. I'm talking soccer, not American football. And up with basketball, because basketball has been able over the past 20 years to go on this cultural odyssey throughout Asia and throughout Europe, and you can go back and further into the 70s in Europe. But in the United States, it continues to lose because of the way that Major League Baseball has operated. It's continuing to be pastoral. And looking at Carl Ravage's Twitter, this is from a few hours ago. We're recording this at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday. MLB has made a proposal to players, 75% prorated salaries for a 76-game season. Playoff pool money, no draft pick compensation for signing players. Season finishes on September 27th. Postseason ends at the end of October.
Wow. So, okay. Child listeners, we'll ask you, but thank you for taking the time, as always, for checking us out and listening to this. And we welcome any feedback that you give us beyond words. Is there any other season? Is there any other franchise? I apologize. Any other league that we have where you hear the phrases uttered, the season's too long, other than baseball?
No.
Because I never hear with hockey. Hockey plays
80 games.
80 games. NBA plays 82.
Mm-hmm.
We said 80 games, 80 matches. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But you never hear those seasons are too long at any point. And I mean, from across the board, I mean, from diehard fans to not so diehard fans to people who just, oh, well, wow, the baseball season. Well, I thought that ended a year ago, you know. And the fact that that's how you're discussed now, to argue in front of the children at the dinner table like this over this stuff, man, it's a horrible look. You're the things that you're doing to yourself of all times, right? Mm-hmm. You know, with players who, and again, not talking about the money, but players who are millionaires, who are arguing with billionaires, and eventually one trillionaire, I guess. This idea that it's okay because we deserve whatever, that's a fine attitude to have. But when you look at your fan base, who and what they go through to purchase tickets, to come to the game, to buy those Major League Baseball packages, whether they're Sirius XM radio or the Major League Baseball television package, whatever, the things that people go through for you. We're not saying that you don't deserve what's coming your way. That's not the point here. The point is, at a certain point at this time, right now, it would be great to be the bigger person and to be the bigger group and say, you know what? We talk about our fans. we have all these ads in this together, Boston Strong, blah, 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 whatever. We have all these fans. We appreciate you. We do the end of season commercials with with pastoral music and the sheep running across the field and somebody's petting a goat and somebody talks about how baseball is a part of the American dynasty, like Canadian hockey and, German beer, whatever the commercials say, right? So you do that. Well, now you can really show it. You can do something to actually show, you know what, we know you guys want us back. We're going to make every effort to get us back. And the questions and the problems we're going to have is going to be about safety for the players, health for the league, this, that, and third, whatever. Not how much are we getting paid to go out there and play this game that other people wanted to see us play, because a lot of people just need it right now. And just Major League Baseball just proves on a regular basis they don't get it. The NBA is jacked up as the NBA is. Right, with this new 20 players? I'm sorry, 20 teams, 22 teams allowed to go to the Orlando
22
bubble.
teams, 13 from the Western Conference, 9 from the East, playing a shortened basically kind of wrapping up the season for the teams that can contend for the playoffs, then going straight to the playoffs. The NHL is holding a 24-team tournament, I believe, right, with the bottom seeds playing play-in games or play-in series. The New York Rangers are in it, so that's the only thing I care about.
The only team.
But they'll be playing at neutral sites, I believe, next month. All of this is starting to set up for July. Right, July is when, around the country, sports in earnest will be coming back in some form or fashion.
Everybody wants that July 4th hit, man. Yeah. The big boost of July 4th of, America, sports, blah, 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 everything back. And hey, good. You have a target winner, you have a plan. But okay, let me get this straight. The NHL, a league of colossal failures, and a league that's in many cases efforts to be a colossal failure, can manage to get it right. Major League Baseball being led by the Noodle Man, who just can't make a decision. And the only reason it's 22 teams is because they want to get the Zion look in, because everybody wants to see Zion play a few more games, right? So that's let's be real about it, okay? And 22 teams are how many teams short of everyone else? 8.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, really.
Well, it's for those teams. A lot of those teams, the Blazers voted no on this plan, because why am I gonna enter into this? Why am I gonna put myself in jeopardy?
Right.
To play in something where I'm not going to be guaranteed a spot in the playoffs.
Exactly.
Like, I'm just playing. I get why they're doing that. It's so that they avoid meaningless games, which is kind of going back to our conversation about in Major League Baseball. And there's a mutual friend of ours named Jonathan Rios, who we worked with at WKRB, and he is agitated and frustrated about baseball not coming back, and he's mad at the players. He's mad at the players for wanting, what they deserve in terms of salaries. Now, we can go round and round on why the luxury tax is garbage and why there should be a salary cap and how this has crippled baseball for the future. And it's basically destroyed the idea of small market clubs becoming dynasties. You take a look at the Kansas City Royals from less than 6 years ago. We were looking at a potential dynasty. Now that team's imploded, and I think most of those players are now playing in the Caribbean League.
Yeah.
You see how baseball in the 1990s set themselves up for preposterous failure 20 years down the line, because they've started these inflated salaries. They've started these inflated ideas of, and Olive agrees.
There's Olive, my girl.
It's more in line with a league that thought they were continuing to outkick their coverage. They were continuing to just hope and live and die on the model they've been having for hundreds of years. And as we've seen with free agency, we've seen with the salary cap, the wheels of progress grind slowly in the world of sports. And I'm going to go grab my dog.
Yeah, go grab your dog. So, hey, Olive, how you doing, buddy? So, this idea, right? We see teams who try to live off a certain model that are obviously lucrative enough from year to year to year to survive and remain a part of whatever league they're in. And then we see leagues that manage to somehow do just enough to stay okay, to stay relevant, to stay functional. I mean, obviously, if they were all losing money, they wouldn't be doing it. These people are very smart. They know how to make money. They know to do what they do. So there it is. There's my middle linebacker. So this idea of why are they doing this? Well, they're doing it obviously because on a certain level it's successful to them. But then you can't do that, and then while you're losing market share, complain about losing market share if you're not willing to adapt and change, as you brought up earlier, right? Mm-hmm. So the NBA figured out how to do that. Major League Baseball, the NASCAR for sure is and I thought about this. I listened to some of our shows from way back, right? And we talked about NASCAR being the model league even back then, before we even talked about NASCAR, right? How they had it together, and that has not changed. And they keep adapting themselves to fit in with what's happening now, what's relevant, and what's going on. And just to see Major League Baseball effort, it's like their effort to get it wrong. Is you have all this stuff in front of you, right? You have all these things in front of all this information in front of you. And then you still pick the answer that's going to give you the path of most resistance and the path of least success. Mind-boggling, mind-blowing. And I love my boy Rios. It don't take much to get him exploded anyway, but he's right on the mark with this one. So speaking of that idea, right? You listen to One More Word Pod. We thank you so much for taking the time. However you're listening to us, however you're looking at us. I did shower at some point last month, so we're good.
I think I showered Saturday. We gave Olive a bath yesterday.
So all right. Well, look, if one, I mean, I think it's actually in the Bible. If one family member bathes, everybody's bathed.
Okay.
So we're good. So we're good.
Good job, Olive.
So Matthew asked me, after many conversations back in the show, when we had Jonathan on the show, we had Greg Benedetto on the show, other people on the show, they asked me many times, and even after that, in different versions of Gotta Say It, what was it going to take to get me back to the NBA? What's going to take you? What, Marvin? What's going to take you to watch NBA? Yeah. So it happened last year. Actually, it happened.
What?
It happened. I know. I snuck it up on you. Trae Young of the Atlanta Hawks got me back to the NBA.
Interesting.
Because of, and I know you shouldn't put stock in this all the time, but for me, it was a catalyst, and that was what type of kid he was, the way he treated himself, the way he presented himself when he came to Atlanta. What he's done around the city, what he mean, and I'm not even talking about what he's doing on the floor, which is still record. I mean, when your name is mentioned with Oscar Robertson, Michael Jordan, yeah, I said it. Magic Johnson. When your name is mentioned with those kind of cats, and you're only in the league 1, 2, maybe 3 years, that's not bad. And not only is he doing it and maintaining it on a team that's a lot better, a lot sooner than people thought it was going to be, but he's doing it in a way that will support whenever Atlanta's able to get some support for him with some other top tier players. And I don't mean salary-wise, I mean ability-wise, that he will be a force to be reckoned with. And he is probably the first time for me in the NBA where, LeBron thing aside, he's a cat who, to me, is the first, for a team that I even think about caring about, first franchise player, a player you can build a franchise around. Somebody who can be like an Oscar Robertson, somebody who can be like a Magic Johnson, somebody who can be like one of those cats who can really change the direction of a franchise for decades to come. And you know, I know Atlanta gets a lot of things wrong. You know, they have a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl and they blow it. You know, they get to Super Bowl and the president of the Christian Athletic League, NFL Athletic League, gets caught out with women of the evening who sell intimacy for financial considerations. You know, all these things that happen to the various Atlanta franchises. A star player is having an affair with one of the coaches while they're in the middle of the playoff, or coaches' wives, I'm sorry, when they're in the middle of the playoffs, and they find out about and fight about it at Atlanta Hartsfield Airport. All these things that even happen to Atlanta, right? You know, the owner decides he wants to be manager for forever, and then that lasts about 20 games too many. Just different things that have happened to Atlanta, which like, oh God, I can't, no, not again, right? We're going to talk about another thing for Atlanta later, but this guy brought me back to NBA. I started paying attention again. Who was playing who was on whose team, what was going on, and the Hawks became my team. The Hawks are not my team. They're my NBA franchise. And I'm saying that even after they drafted Marvin Williams. So not me, the other Marvin Williams, the 6'9" guy. I'm only 6'6". So, but yeah, so I'm now an NBA fan. So maybe next year I'll do an NBA fantasy league or something and really get into it and pay attention again, because
I am surprised. I am perplexed. Welcome. Congratulations on having a team with better ownership than the New York Knicks. I'm really like going back and forth on the Brooklyn Nets, New York Knicks pick that will I, won't I conversation from about a decade ago. Yeah. And I'm really kicking myself in the ass.
Man, you know what? It is for fans who are real fans, you know, like you're teaching me to be, and I realize I have that in Madonna somewhere. It's no matter how bad your team is, it's still your team.
Yeah.
You know, no matter what, you know, man, I will wear my Jets gear. I don't care. I will even when the Rangers were, and you know this, when the Rangers were the worst example of an NHL team, when the NHL was the worst example of a league franchise, I was still wearing my Rangers gear. You know, your team is your team, no matter what, thick or thin, right? So, and even with all of that, right? I find myself thinking, okay, so as much as and I'm talking about man crazy about Kevin Garnett. I could root for him, but I could care less what team he was on. I just liked him, his work ethic, what he brought to the table, what he did, how he sort of spoke to power, how he never changed who he was. Shaq was someone else. I could always root for Shaq because I saw him when he played ball in high school. I saw him when he played ball in college. I saw him when he played ball in the pros. And the only thing that was different was how much money he was making, because he stayed exactly the same, and he's still the same to this day, right? So, you know, there are certain people who I found myself just pulling for just because. Charles Barkley, there is no way I could be in the same room with Charles Barkley until I met him. You know, you meet somebody, you almost work with somebody, and just to put the story out there, I was working on a program when I was a professor at City University of New York at Kingsborough, and doing a program to help minority men get to college. And I reached out to a lot of athletes and stuff like that, and one of the first responses I got was Charles Barkley. Not the Charles Barkley now, but the one who was in and out of trouble with the police, the one who was broke. And he said, I ain't got no, but I'll help you any kind of way I can, my dude. I got you. You know, just all I need. I'm in New York doing the games with TNT. Just give me a ride and get me back to work on time, and I'll do whatever I can do to help you raise some money. He was so cool, and everybody who met him just talked about what a giving person he was, of the one thing you can never get back, and that's your time. What kind of caring guy he was, how he and I liked him. I didn't like him. Then I started to like him. Then I started to respect him, and now more and more seeing him have his success is like, this is great, because this is who I want somebody like that to get, because he hasn't changed. He's still the same guy. He owns his warts. He says, yeah, I messed up by doing this. I messed up by doing that. I should have did this. I didn't because I was stupid. And he doesn't hide. He doesn't run away from a statement that he makes. He will say, I'm wrong. He will do all those things that these high Q factor guys will never do. So as much as I dig him, I still would have a hard time kind of going to the NBA. But I love watching him and Shaq talk about the NBA. I love watching their conversation.
Analyst show in sports, by the way.
Right. Absolutely. So, but Trae Young brought me back to the game. Trae Young brought me back. Now, I watched the Hawks last season. I listened to, I say watch. Everybody knows I'm a radio guy. So I would turn on the satellite radio channel with the game. I'd watch the game on TV and I'd sync it up with the satellite radio channel because just TV announcers just make me crazy. But it was awesome. It was, and I'm glad. But to see them left out of this Zion tournament that's coming up was very disappointing for me. And that's when I realized I'm really back. I'm really back as a fan of the team because I wanted to see more Trae Young. I wanted to see him do more what he was doing.
Vince Carter getting to end his career. He's an Atlanta Hawk too, and him getting that not being able to end his career on his terms. Everybody knew this was going to be his last season, and it really sucks that we won't be able to honor one of the most prolific players in the history of the NBA. Got an entire generation to become fans of basketball because of his personality, his ability to dunk, his work on the Toronto Raptors just as a player. Mm-hmm. Olive's sad about it. I'm sad about it. It's really crappy to see that happen.
Certain people, certain athletes, I'm going to use the deserved word, so please, fans, don't eat me alive for this. Just hear me out. Certain athletes, I keep it in realm of sports, don't deserve to have their career ended in certain ways, right? So my last baseball game was after I had cracked open my eye trying to catch a ball in the rain at a semi-professional game on Long Island with the what was now the New York Reds. And the guy who owned the team was also a player on the team. And his whole thing was he would spend the whole game making parfaits for everybody. Super nice guy, sweetheart of a dude. But that's how he wanted to be a pro baseball player. He knew he'd never make it for real. So he bought into one of those wooden bat leagues and registered and became a semi-pro team and semi-pro, like the movie Semi-Pro. And it was just, so that was my last night of baseball. I was playing center field, which I've never really done before, and it's raining, and I ran for a ball, and I misjudged it, and it clunked me on my eye. I got a whelp on my eye. This is a hot mess. So that was, which the other inning before that, which had been even more great, was it was Ed Smith Stadium at the time in Sarasota, Florida, with the White Sox trying to make the team, being told I had a shot to at least get the official invite past spring training and maybe go to eyeball or whatever. And I'm out on a day when I didn't have to work out, and I tore my ACL between the dirt and I'm sitting there in this rain, and it's raining because I like the rain. I've never seen rain, but I'm laying there with the rain in my face thinking, I know my ACL is torn because my knee swelled to the size of multiple grapefruits. And I was thinking, I'm now at the age where they're going to say, no, bruh, thank you for playing. Here's your door prize. Here's a hat and a t-shirt. Go home. So I deserve that because I was a never was. Tom Glavine's baseball career should not have ended on a AA field being told he was going to be brought back up to the Braves to finish out his career and then being cut after he plays a AA game. Ugh. Vince Carter's career shouldn't end with, I guess if it ended in a great way where he hits a last second 3-pointer shot. But with the kind of season that this has become, there's the anticlimactic again. And I am not a Vince Carter fan. on any level, but I respect him and I respect what he's done for the game. I respect what he kind of means to the game, and we can talk about why I'm not a fan of his at another point, but I still can appreciate him for what he's done and for how he's done, and the fact that he's managed to be a professional athlete for 20 plus years and contributing, not just sitting on a bench somewhere, right? So, there's certain careers shouldn't end like that. And Vince Carter is one of those guys. Like you said, his career shouldn't end like this. With like a meow. Oops, sorry about that. Didn't mean to sound olive, my bad. But the NBA really let me down by making it the Zion Williams tournament. I'm going to forever call it that because that's exactly what it's about. They want to get more eyes on Zion Williams, and that's fine. He's making them whatever he's making them. He represents them whatever he's representing them, and that's okay. And with Major League Baseball not getting it, they don't have far to go to see a league that is working out and trying to work out the details of what they're going to do for their players. And that is the PGA Tour. Let's get this out of the way. The NFL has won the lottery. If they can let everybody else mess up
on their side, they've got all of this on their side.
Exactly. So they're fine. I mean, the fat cat's getting fatter. But PGA, there was and I am trying to find a way. Like now, when I'm listening to something, I will Shazam it or I'll screenshot it or whatever when I'm reading something, so I can always give credit to who it was. But this was something I heard on PGA satellite radio. An author who wrote, he's a professional golfer who's now stepping out of the game to do more other stuff. He just talked about how many PGA players who are not fully invested in the league will have to give up their professional golf career now because of the perpetual shutdown. And he talked, and it really drove home the fact that how much money these cats have to spend in order to stay in that league. The ones who, we're not talking about the top tier guys. We're not talking about Tiger Woods. We're not talking about Rory McIlroy, who we're going to talk about later. We're not talking about those guys. We're talking about the cats who are everyday journeymen who are still great golfers. They're great golfers, but they can't afford to stay and remain professional golfers because they haven't been able to accumulate points on the Korn Ferry Tour. They have not been able to accumulate monies that need to qualify for your card. So for a lot of guys, they are going to have to say goodbye to their dream of playing professional golf this year because as it stands right now, with the Memorial Tournament coming up, at best, if you are not a fully fledged card holder in the PGA and your picture's frozen on the screen, Matthew, I don't know what that means, but I'm just letting you know.
What was that?
Your picture's frozen on the screen. You look like you're giving a high five to the microphone. I can hear you, but you kind of got this look going on. Because of, even if they were to officially start back up 100% this week or next week with the Memorial, if you're not a fully fledged and fully vested card holder for the PGA Tour, you won't be able to become one of any status until 2022-2023 season. That's 2 more years of not making any money, shuttling yourself around, paying your entry fees, doing all these things you need to do to chase the dream of becoming a professional golfer. And as one of the things that I shared with Matthew, one of my goals was I wanted to qualify enough to get good enough to play on some of the mini tours. Like there are a bunch of mini tours where you can go, you pay your entry fee of a couple of grand and you get a chance to win on the tour or whatever. But I just wanted to put a chance to go for the professional competition. So, and there's some monsters on the mini tour. I mean, guys who are PGA level and the whole nine on the mini tour, right? So I figured, you know what, this would be my year to do it. Well, in the middle of getting ready for that, because I'm not that great a golfer, but when I played, the most time I was good enough to kind of represent, and I figured I want to at least give it a shot. I wasn't expecting to win anything. I just wanted the chance to be out there. Found out that I had cancer. A lot of things got shut down, and including that, right? So I still said, okay, so I put my dream for that off by another year, get my act back together, do what I got to do to get up to play. But even to play on the mini tours, you have to be supremely super solid and all together. And so to try to go to the PGA Tour, a whole nother level where guys are shooting who they don't have handicaps. The course owes them shots because they're so, like Tiger had a handicap. I forgot what it was, but basically he was so good at one point that whenever he played a course, the course had to give him, I think it was 12 shots. Like, in other words, no. We're not going to give you extra shots to make par. The course are taking those shots away from you because you're so good, right? So, no, I'm not talking about those cats. I'm talking about cats like me, right? So Major League Baseball getting it wrong. The PGA, not that far away, right? Like, are in danger of losing people because of what's going on. And these guys are trying to find any kind of way it is to make a living and to stay in the sports. And I'm going to pause on this note. Again, I'm Marvin Williams, not the draft pick of the Atlanta Hawks, and it's Matthew Ryan, who looks a lot like the draft pick for the Atlanta Hawks, but yes, it's the same name as the draft pick for the Atlanta Falcons. We're not those guys. We're other guys, and we're the good guys. So, yeah. So, we left off with you talking about how the PGA is in danger of losing players because of this perpetual shutdown, what is going on, and what is kind of leads to that thing that we talked about in the episode of how many ancillary businesses are hurting because of there being no sports and no this and no that, and how things are just forever changed. I won't say new normal because it's just what it is, but it has become this idea that, okay, unlike NASCAR that we always talk about and hail as the gold standard, right? Other leagues have pooled all of their revenue streams, all of their markets into one big thing. So when they lose one, everybody kind of gets crippled. And with the PGA, because they get money from not only us, but from the players too, to support the golf courses for the tournaments and things like that, they're going to lose hundreds of players that could play at that level over this next year, maybe even more. That's going to put a dent in who's going to be on the tour even next year. So you got that going. But what it's also shown us is there are leagues that, for lack of, or I didn't say league, I'll say that there are not just franchises that are ineffectual with being able to handle a change, but there are certain entities that are connected to these franchises.
Oh boy.
Leagues that are ineffectual with handling change. Matthew and I do not do Mount Rushmore lists because everybody does that. Who cares? We mock drafts because nobody knows. And we rather talk about more substantive things. But there's an ancient Sumerian text that keeps getting decoded a little bit at a time. And it's from around 5200 BCE, so give or take. I know the cuneiform language wasn't finalized until 5400, but just kind of roll with me on this one. Okay, I'm sorry, around 5000 BCE. So just kind of go with us on this, because the Sumerians really had it together. They just didn't want you to know that they had the language written down yet. That's all it was. We know we were there. So one of the first things that was decoded from this text is Bootsy Collins is a universal answer. So we never call somebody's. Yeah, it's always Bootsy. So if you want to know if you don't know who should be the next coach of your team, you be the next general manager for your team, the answer is Bootsy Collins. This is the answer, because you'll never go wrong. So that's one thing that was in the text. Another thing in the text was just Bill Russell. That's all it is. It's Bill Russell. So do with that what you will. But this, they just, and we're going to break news right here. So breaking news. They finally decoded another line of text. And it says, when there are no sports, listen to Herm. Listen to Herm when there are no sports. And here's what it means. ESPN just, and Matt just talked about it. ESPN just did a redrafting of the league and all these players on different places because hindsight is 100. So they just did a redrafting. Now, that is great in theory, but it doesn't take into account the factors of those teams and the coaching staff and the type of system that's run when those players go there. The assumption, well, they're great. Mahomes is great in Kansas City, so he'd be great anywhere. And that's not wrong. But if Mahomes is a rookie or a young player in a different system with a different type of coach, he might not have the same freedoms to have the input that he has, right? You know, like everybody talk about Tom Brady could have been a Jet. Woo! Yeah, he might have been a Jet. And right now we're talking about him as an announcer because the Jets didn't have the kind of system that he was able to come into that, you know, when you had, you know, the human pine tree, Drew Bledsoe as a quarterback, that would fit at that time Tom Brady's game, where he was able to come in after Mo Lewis did aggravated battery on Bledsoe and he turned good job, Jets. And then Tom Brady comes in and he's able to run that offense with a much better arm, much better decision-making process and all other stuff that comes along with it, right? So you can do these realignments, and that's great on paper, but when you do it without any substantive look at the type of system that they might be going into and what it might mean, you're not going to get the same player. Circumstances matter. Structure matters. And I'm fine with debates. Let's have a fact-based debate with emotion, but let's not have an emotional debate without facts. Let's not do that side of it because that goes nowhere and it services no one. It just doesn't mean anything. And ESPN, this is because there's no real content. They got people there with nothing else to do, I guess.
So I'll just run through the draft really quickly. I just want to give you some highlights. The first pick was Cincinnati, Patrick Mahomes. And these are the beat writers for ESPN for all 32 teams in the National Football League making these picks. So Mahomes to Cincinnati, Russell Wilson to Washington, Lamar Jackson taken third overall to Detroit, Deshaun Watson fourth to the Giants, Aaron Donald to Miami. But we scroll down a little bit for your New York Metropolitans. Carson Wentz goes at number 11. Before Aaron Rodgers.
But see, again, that's how you
it gets better. It gets better. At number 12 is Aaron Rodgers to the Las Vegas Raiders. Joe Burrow gets taken 13th by Indianapolis. Tampa Bay drafts Tom Brady. Now, here's my favorite. Now, number 16 is Matt Ryan. So Atlanta picks Matt Ryan again.
Okay.
They make that mistake again. Number 15 is the Denver Broncos.
Uh-oh.
And the Denver Broncos draft Drew Lock, the guy they drafted in the second round of the last year's draft. So this beat writer could have drafted anybody in the National Football League. Christian McCaffrey, Jimmy Garoppolo, Teddy Bridgewater. Kyler Murray gets taken 17th by Dallas. You got Ryan Tannehill, DeAndre Hopkins, Matthew Stafford, Tua Tagovailoa. George Kittle goes 31st. And at 15... this beat writer decides to take Drew Lock. Now, this guy's Drew Lock is trending on Twitter as we're recording this because this is the most banana pants pick I think I've seen in any, like, Marvin and I have rebuilt leagues before. We've tried to develop and basically rejigger what everything in pro sports looks like because we had 2 hours on a Saturday on a radio station. We took the time of about a decade ago to meticulously draft and sculpt the all-decade teams for across pro football, all pro football leagues. and I built them in a video game, and then they ended up having the season simulated, and I believe the 1970s came out the victor, if I recall correctly. And this guy picks Drew Lock. Now, on this show, we don't call for anybody's jobs. But I am gonna have I want his press credentials looked at very closely.
Very closely.
And I want to interview with this writer to figure out why is it that the quarterback out of Missouri who was taken in the second round goes ahead of the best tight end in the league, the best running back in the league, Khalil Mack. If you're just fantasy drafting for the sake of fantasy drafting, which we've all done numerous times,
and it's fine, and that's fine. You should, but
that is the most Denver Broncos pick. Because that franchise, with the exception of John Elway and for Peyton Manning, when it comes to quarterbacks,
it's like the Jets, still looking for somebody. But listen, if you want to say something to get people to go, oh wow, look at that, okay, fine, victory, you won, yay. But to represent yourself as a professional and say that, I would love to know. I too would love to know the reasoning, because again, you should listen to Herm. Don't press send. Just like the Sumerian said, listen to Herm. Don't press send, because that's something you could have kept to yourself. Just like ESPN did the top 5 in champions. Have you seen this?
No, I've not.
So from 5 to 1. Number 5 is Muhammad Ali, greatest champions of all time. Muhammad Ali was number 5. Number 4 was Tiger Woods.
Okay.
Number 3 was Michael Phelps.
Oh, Olympian, that's, set records. That's fair, but he's only competing once every 4 years.
Ali changed the world. He was Colin Kaepernick before it was Colin Kaepernick. He was Curt Flood before it was Curt Flood. Which, by the way, they're looking like twins to me now. Like Colin Kaepernick, who started the kneeling protest and now can't get a job, and now the league is saying it's okay to kneel. I mean, Colin Kaepernick is kind of becoming the new Curt Flood. He's never going to.
And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a sports executive.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about this situation. He's like, "Yeah, Colin Kaepernick's probably never getting a job in the NFL again," and they've just completely changed their tune on all this.
Exactly. But, I mean, Curt Flood, we got free agency because of Curt Flood. He never played a game again and never got the benefit from his change. So anyway, but they got Michael Phelps third. And I'm like, really? So, okay, so now I'm totally turned off, right? Mm-hmm. So number 2 is Serena Williams, with all she's done in tennis and stuff like that, and what she represents sort of outside of tennis. I was a little okay with that, but still being ahead of Muhammad Ali was a really hard go for me. And
number one's going to suck, isn't it?
No.
Really?
Here's where they steered their card for me, and I'm going to prove it to you. Whenever we talk about champions and greatest players during their time and what they represent to the league, there are 2 names I always bring up that I would always start my team with. Do you remember who those 2 do? Can you think of who those 2
Bill
names?
Russell.
Boom. Winner. You didn't even need number 2, because number 2 would have been Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Russell they had as number 1.
Well, he is empirically the most successful professional athlete in any league ever.
And what he represented for changing the color barrier in the game, in the NBA, first black coach, first player coach, first black player coach, first black coach, first black exec. All these things that he did to change that league in a time in the middle of the civil rights marches and that was him. Now, I know the easy answer, which is not the answer, is Jackie Robinson in a lot of ways, because of how he changed the landscape of baseball and in essence changed the landscape of society. With the NHL, we could have went with Willie O'Ree, the very first black NHL player for the Boston Bruins. We could have talked about the first black NASCAR driver. We were just talking about NASCAR, and Wendell Scott, number 34. His car was number, because I was thinking of Peyton. I was thinking of Peyton.
Walter Payton.
Walter Payton, thank you. So, but Wendell Scott, the first Black American NASCAR driver. I mean, so there are a lot of people we can say, but in terms of like what they became, what they've come to represent to not only their sport but to society as a whole, to have Muhammad Ali and granted, Tiger Woods or what he's done, what he represents is one thing. So, is there a place for him on that list? Okay, sure, fine. Malcolm Phelps, you gotta go. I do respect, dude. Take your bong, get back on the school bus. I'm sure there's some things that you've done that are great, and I'll be glad to check them out. But to me, you're right up there with the fact that Elmer Fudd no longer can carry a gun, which sucks. Because what is Elmer Fudd without a gun? He's a farmer, and that's not awesome. It's cool, but Elmer Fudd without it. Come on, I mean, really, and it's like Yosemite Sam. Come on, they're gonna take away his guns too. Come on, man.
George Soros. This is all George Soros' fault.
When there are no sports, listen to Herm. The Sumerians said it 5,200 years before the birth of Christ. They said, listen to Herm, don't press in. And they press in. And the PGA, Rory McIlroy. Rory McIlroy was a victim of friendly fire by the PGA. I'm sorry, not PGA, golf.com. Golf.com, we're putting you there with Espen. You messed up with this one. So somebody tweeted out or put out, one, like, okay, how we did our all-decade teams and had them play each other, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody said, who would win between peak Rory McIlroy in his career and peak Tiger Woods? If there was not a time to use the drunk tweet method to give yourself a few minutes to really think about what you just asked, that was the moment.
Rory McIlroy is a great golfer, but Tiger Woods in his prime is the greatest golfer of all time.
Let's take the next 10 golfers behind Tiger Woods in their prime and have Tiger go against them and watch Tiger still come. And Matthew knows this. I had to come along with the Tiger Woods fandom thing because she was brilliant and beautiful, has always been a Tiger Woods fan. She turned me on to Tiger Woods. And I was like, yeah. And I said, oh, yeah, now this guy really is good. So, so I'm not speaking from some sort of like, oh, yeah, he's whatever. No. Dude, that tweet should not have even, the second you thought about it, you should have went, yeah, that'd be something silly to do on April Fool's Day. Mm-hmm. Not something for a serious, and I love golf.com. I think I love golf, and you know how much I love golf. Mm-hmm. But to see that, we go, really? Of all the things, because we'd hear it, okay, peak Muhammad Ali versus peak Mike Tyson. And we hear all those sorts of things from back in the day. But of all the ones to drag up Tiger against anyone, I mean, there's a reason that people would say it's Tiger versus the field, because he won at a percentage clip double that of anyone else at the best of their time, and he does it on a regular basis.
And also golf, that's not a comparable sport because different courses, different periods of time, different advances in technology. Like golf is a very solitary game, and when you're talking about an Ali versus Tyson, that's a skills comparison, that's a style comparison, that's a mentality comparson, and also
the ring is still the ring. Mm-hmm. All those things. You're absolutely right. Yes,
direct competition. Now, if any other sport but golf, you could probably do an equal comparison because it's somebody playing against someone else.
Right, direct.
So Serena Williams is hitting the ball to someone. Right. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is playing defense on Bill Russell. Like there's a through line. In golf, there's no through line. It is you getting to that cup in the least amount of shots possible, but everybody does it in a different way using different clubs.
Thank you. And it is, whenever I see the comparison between Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus, you go back and how I go about it, and my methodology is this. I look at how many other people won during their heyday. So you go back and look at Nicklaus, there's probably 5, maybe 6 names you saw on a regular basis who won other than Nicklaus. With Tiger, there's 20, 30 people because of how all of a sudden golf was being treated as a sport, people getting physically fit, other things that go along with it. And so the competition and the technology, and also, so there's a greater level of competition. You know, hitting your drive 300 yards on the fairway, eh, talk to me when you get to 330. Talk to me when you get to 340. You know, those are huge. Those it changes the way you can attack a course and the things you can do that Tiger has to, in the world Tiger plays in more so than Jack Nicklaus. And so that's a perfect example of how, dude, no, it's you, your gear and the ball. You, your gear and the ball, me, my gear and the ball, her gear and the ball, whatever. That's what, and who comes with the best score? Just comes with the best score because of how you played that hole, whatever. You might beat so and so on one hole, but you might not beat them for 18 holes. And that was something I learned trying to get better because I could talk about earlier was I want to get on the mini tours. And these guys who are going out and they take out a home loan so they can pay their fees for the next couple of years, and they sleep in their cars, and all they have is their gear, and they have no sponsorships. And these cats are going, and they're smoking it. So you look at these guys who are on these mini tours, making barely any money, if any at all, and then what it takes to be somebody on the PGA Tour. There are people who won majors on the PGA Tour now who are still trying to get back to the PGA Tour. Cat won the British Open. He's on the Corn Ferry Tour now. Cat won the U.S. Open. He's on the Corn Ferry Tour now. He's on a mini tour now, trying to get back to the PGA because it's hard to maintain it. You have to be one of the top elite 100 and what was it, 200 players in the world to be on that tour. A lot of people playing golf. So unless you're one of those game guys and ladies, you do no, go back to the muni course and just enjoy it, right? So and again, to bag on golf because you got it wrong. Look up today, my buddy Tink Walker. That's her Twitter handle, Tink Walker, in Perth, Australia, puts out a tweet. It'd have been good to know about this last week. And I read the tweet because I read everything that Anita writes about because she's a great golf writer. So, hey, Anita, how you doing? There apparently was a live Twitter Q&A last week with Michelle Wie about what it's like to be one of the new late moms on the LPGA Tour and et cetera. And Michelle Wie is, of course, one of the most recognizable faces in women's golf. And though people say she hasn't won the way they thought she was going to win, she's done a lot to change how women's golf is looked at and things like that. And also, in my opinion, one of the three greatest swings in the history of golf is Michelle Wie. If I didn't think that I would end up losing a liver, I would try to emulate her swing because it's just amazing. But there was a Q&A last week, and so apparently it didn't have a lot of participation. So now they say you can go back and you can read what she. So they sort of reposted it so you can hear her answers to questions. But her answer was perfect. It said, "Would have been nice to know about it last week," because maybe more people would have joined. I know I would have. Anytime I see a live Q&A with a golfer, especially LPGA golfer, because you're more likely to get the truth, for me anyway, in terms of their experience, what they go through, how they go about their work ethic, how they, one of my biggest questions is always, how do you go about your practice rounds? Because I'm always curious about that. Sometimes when I'm lucky enough to play by myself, I'll make it a practice round. I'm not playing for a score. I'm playing to work on stuff. And yes, that's an expensive way to do it, but it's okay. It's my game. It's what is. I still enjoy it. I'm still having fun. So, I might hit if I'm playing by myself and there's nobody right behind me because I don't want to play slow, I might hit a couple of balls. And then whichever one so this hole, if I hit a good ball, I'm going to play that one. The next hole, if I hit a bad ball, I'm going to play the bad ball. Whatever I'm going to do, just to kind of work on my game. And I might take in a couple extra putts on the green as long as there's no one right behind me, just to take the time so I can really work on something. So I always want to know how professionals work on their golf game. So that's always one of my go-to questions because I'm really curious because everybody goes about it differently. Right. And so things like that, I would have loved to know, like which, by the way, these ladies who are expecting child, like Brittany Lincecum, Michelle Wie, a lot of other women golfers over the last few years that are expecting a child because they don't get the same sort of maternity leave, right? Their sponsors bolt on them a lot of times. They have to wait till they come back. So the fact that they have to play while expecting at this high level, I'm sorry. If you never walked 18 holes and had to focus on every shot, and I'm not talking about you and your boys riding the cart, drinking beer, chasing the cart girl and whatever. I'm not talking about you people because you suck. I'm talking about people who really do this for a living, who really, really hump on it every day. And so now these ladies are expecting and playing in these professional tournaments. That's huge, right? That's huge. So how they go about their art, to me, says a lot. And it is saying poor connection on my part. So it was my fault that what was going on before. So I don't know what it's doing now, but it was it was. So welcome to Georgia. Here's your sign. So that being said, she's right. Annette was right. Like, it'd have been good to know about this last week.
Mm-hmm.
So, dude, you dropped the ball. You don't tell me after the fact. Yeah, and now more than ever, we talk about how social media, how a bubble is not a bubble, right? So these are the kind of things where sometimes you don't need to press in, and sometimes you need to be careful when you press in. Okay, James Harrison said that after he was fined for some hit on a quarterback, that he was that Mike Tomlin handed him an envelope.
Mm-hmm.
You say, what was in the envelope? He said, okay, now people are going to get their ears up. We know how angry, even though they were college teammates at one particular point, Mike Tomlin and James Harrison, there's still bad blood between them because of how James Harrison's career ended in Pittsburgh. And a lot of it, I think he blames Mike Tomlin for because they're supposed to be boys. So, him kind of saying stuff, But Mike Norville, the coach of Florida State, comes out and says that after the George Floyd incident that they spoke with every single player and they've done whatever. And Marvin Wilson, one of the spiritual and physical leader of the Florida State Seminole football team, said, no, you did not. And this is what we got. And basically said, no, you never would have heard a player go against Bear Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe never heard a player go against Urban Meyer. Coach Nick's, you might not hear it. Now, these players have the same voice to speak up the way their professional counterparts do. So their Twitter accounts get followed by people in the media, like they get followed by their fans and family members. So when they say something, say, no, coach, you call me. People say, well, coach, how are you going to respond to that? Marvin Wilson said you didn't talk to him at all. So when you see that kind of thing, now all of a sudden they're trying to backtrack. And now a lot of coaches are trying to delete a lot of their old tweets and texts and stuff like that. And it's too late when they use racial slurs and things like that. A bubble is no longer a bubble. Nothing you do in private amongst people that are not your family, and even in some cases when they are your family, is going to remain that way. It's press in and it's out there. And Matthew would tell you this within Matthew and I have been working together now for 11 years. I've known him for nearly 13. And there are still some experiences that I've had as a wannabe athlete, as whatever you want, or even as a musician. There are some stories I've told him, and I've never put any names to it. Just because, and it's not that I trust Matthew. I love Matthew. He's my guy. But I don't want that in his head when he hears us. He says, "Oh yeah, I heard where this guy," and he wouldn't. I don't. In my heart of hearts, I honestly believe he would never do it on purpose. But I just don't want that in his head. Hey, sometimes it's people that he likes and people that he is favorable for. In other cases, it's where what. Maybe because of the market he's in, something might come up where he might slip up and say something. Again, not on purpose. I just want that kind of pressure on him to think, oh man, can I say that? Can I not say that? I don't want that because I love him too much to put that kind of pressure on him. So you have to be careful how you handle your business because it's too easy for everyone to find out. Jake Fromm would text to a girl a while ago talking about, white privilege or whatever it was. He's like, dude, bad move, bad go. Drew Brees trying to find a way to backtrack out of the mess he set himself up with when he was tone deaf to the question he was being asked about kneeling and before the game. Just these things matter now because more people have not only have a voice, but they also have access to your voice and what you say. Stuff isn't private anymore. So you got to you to quote again, listen to Herm, you got to be more careful.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the Sumerians had it right over 8,000 years ago. You got to be more careful because that's what's up. So talking about being more careful, we won't do the list today in this episode, but we're going to do something I think better and nicer. I want to talk about a guy, he never made my list, but somebody that I am more than happy to say I was mega wrong about. I mean, mega wrong about. That's Michael Vick.
Interesting.
So a little inside the curtain, and again, you listen to One More Word Pod, Matthew Ryan, Marvin Williams. We thank you for taking your time. As always, however you listen to us, it means the world. But Michael Vick, so I rarely give this sort of full backstory, but I would give most of it. A lot of adjacent family members from the Virginia area knew of Michael Vick from even before. So Michael Vick has been a name kind of on my associative radar for a while. And I get a chance to see him before he becomes the Michael Vick of the Atlanta Falcon days and the whole nine. I get a chance to see him like as he's going into college and, what kind of ball player he was as a basketball player, not just football player, but as a basketball player, just what kind of athlete he was in general. And, kind of see, and I always watch people how they are around other people that they don't have to treat well. And I never saw him treat anybody poorly, so I have to say that first. But it was something about the way that he purported himself that turned me off. And I allowed it to turn me off. I thought in a lot of cases he was incisive. I thought in a lot of cases the people he was running with, he gave too much credence to, and I judged him for that. Wrong. Okay. And though my associative family members would say, no, dude, no. Really, he is a good dude. He's this, he's that, he's whatever. I'm like, man, I don't want to hear it. I'm seeing how this guy's acting. I know what athletes do. I've seen them in public when they act a certain way and how they act in private. And I was wrong. I was prejudicial. I was off the chart, incorrect. And my feelings for him carried over when he became an Atlanta Falcon that is dynamic. And what he represented for the Falcons, what it was, I didn't even appreciate as a football fan because I'm like, Michael Vick, oh, really? And then I hear stories about the parties and the this and that and whatever. Then the dogfighting scandal happened. This is why I'm bringing you because I'm thinking of Olive as I say this. The dogfighting situation happens, right? And it all comes out that his cousins, his brothers and stuff was doing it, but he's the big fish, so that's who the feds want, so they get him. Now, did he hands-on participate in it? I still don't know. And to be honest with you, I would like to think that he maybe didn't, but the fact is he was still involved. It was still his money, still his property, still his whatever. So there was still some level of involvement there that's inexcusable. But then I watched the trial. I watched and read the transcripts of debts that he had to pay back. And, and I eventually read his telling the story of his first night in prison. Not jail, prison. When that door slammed and the guy who's used to all these freedoms all of a sudden realized, I'm not going to have these freedoms anymore. At the height of his football career, now he's in prison. And I eventually read about his transformational journey within himself. But here's the one thing that I got from, and why I'm so happy to say I am glad. I've never been more glad, I think, than this to be wrong about somebody. When it came down to his bankruptcy, one of the things that Michael Vick insisted on was paying back all the debts. And that included even debts that a lot of people felt were bogus, by the way. one guy had purchased up a bunch of had basically got his hands on a bunch of memorabilia and had gotten Mike Vick to sign it or wanted him to sign it. And basically, even though he was able to sell it, he wanted to sue Mike Vick and of what he thought his profit should have been for it. Not for what he should have made for it, what his profit should have been for it. And the judge, get out of here, bro. You smoking good stuff. No, don't come out. Mike Vick said, no, I'll pay him back. Even places that Mike owed money to when he filed bankruptcy, that it was declared he didn't have to pay them back, he paid them back. And then some. Back to how he stood up for himself and stood up to represent what he did, the stuff that he does for animal shelters now across the country. And he goes and speaks, and there's no media there because now he's a good guy, so nobody wants to see that. And all I hear all the time is, Mike Vick spoke at this thing for kids about, how to care for animals and how to do this and how to. And I'm hearing these stories, and I'm not just hearing the stories. These are from people who I love and trust, like you, Matt. So I know it's real. So I am so glad that I was wrong. One, two, I think it's so awesome that he's able to do that and what he's able to represent of the good of what can come out of an opportunity when you have it, and how he realized what he talks openly about how he didn't study, he didn't practice when he would play. He was just so good, and I see that now, and I see that in him. I see what he's doing now, and now as I look back on it, my family was right. It was the choices he made with the people around him, and so you can't get away from your family. You know this. When you got crap family and you can't get away from them, you're stuck with that, dude. And wow, that came out harsh, didn't it?
Well, you're not wrong.
And in a lot of ways, their poor decisions and how it influences your relationship and your life comes into what it means for you. My best buddy growing up did 35 years in federal prison for killing a federal officer. Wow. But we were inseparable. We were inseparable growing up, and I still, despite everything, I still consider him friend. Now, everything else being everything else is what it is. I mean, he's not a good dude, but that was my guy growing up, So all that being said, I'm thankful I was wrong. And I'm thankful that I am blessed to be able to see someone who's made the mistakes that he's made. I know we talked about Charles Barkley earlier, but who made the mistakes that they've made, overcome them. And not just overcome them, but I just did just enough of community service. No. Dude, he blew past the minimum to the point where he's doing stuff that's not even on the radar because he's a good guy and is not interested anymore. And there's still people who bring it up because that's what they do. That's what we do now. It's Twitter. We're always outraged. We're always outraged. It's the internet. You suck forever till you're my quarterback. But but I am, and it's funny because through that, he never made the list, right? Like he was never on the list. And somebody asked me, well, why did he never make the list? And I had to think about it. Yeah, that's right. He never made the list. And I realized because I think there's a part of me, I hope there's a part of me who still felt that, dude, there was still good inside of Darth Vader at that last moment, right? That no matter how I painted him, that there was still good in there, and he still overcame those circumstances. Having a cousin, his cousin was so dirty, by the way, that when they were trying to get it was with Marcus is his cousin.
LaMarcus, no, it's his brother.
Marcus is his brother. Yeah, his brother. That and oh man, I hope this is a public story. I've stepped in it now. I can't bring it back. Okay, here we go. So there's a story about Marcus waiting to be drafted, and all he had to do was basically stay out of trouble for 24 hours or 36 hours or whatever it was. And these guys who were watching out for him basically tried to lock him in a house so he wouldn't go out and mess up so he can get a chance to get drafted to play in the league. And he still managed to get jacked up. And so, it's like, but his brother was one of the reasons, and his cousins were some of the reasons that he ended up doing time. And he basically took the hit for everybody. Yeah, the feds were aiming after him because he always wanted the big fish. And having been a cop, I've been in those rooms where we talked about, well, yeah, you might have got that low level guy, but we really want the big fish because that's going to look better for us and da 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 da. I've been in those conversations. I know what that's like. So, but he took the hit, threw nobody under the bus. He basically pulled a Martha Stewart. Okay, you know what? My signature was on it. I didn't do it. My signature was on it. I'll take the hit. I'll go down for it, and I'll do my time. I'll do what I got to do, and still do good while I'm in there. Martha Stewart. I mean, I loved her before she went to prison. I love her even more now because just of, I just think that just speaks a lot to who she really is. And again, I could be wrong. I'm more than happy to accept that. But from what I've seen and what I've heard, both in front of the mic and behind the mic, there's something about the character of a person who just takes the hit for what they did, don't involve anyone else, and still find a way to work the way out of it. I just think it was awesome. So that's how I want to talk about somebody today that's not on the list, but I just thought deserved a lot of credit for who they are. So there you go.
I can dig it.
Again, we thank you so much for checking us out. One More Word Pod, Matthew Ryan, Marvin Williams, not the draft picks, but the other guys. Again, any topics, any questions, any whatever you might have for us, please feel free to reach out at any point. However you listen to us, even let us know, how you listen to us if you want to reach out. You can find me on Twitter at the side notes because hey, I'm the notes and the edges because everybody reads the stuff in the middle. I like the stuff in the edges. And Matthew, you are at.
You could find me on Twitter at mryanconsulting. I'm on Instagram at Je suis Matt Ryan. You can follow us on Twitter at One More Word Pod, and you can also look up One More Pod on Facebook. New episodes are going to be uploaded every single week on all of our platforms. You go to linktr.ee/one more word pod. And if not, just the link in our Twitter bio, and you'll figure out every which way to listen to us. We're on iHeart. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere there is sound on the internet, anywhere there's streaming audio, whether it's Spotify or YouTube, we're up there. 7 episodes so far. Hopefully we'll be adding some of the back catalog soon. If we add old shows, old episodes, we might, just dump all of them on there. This has been a very fun experiment during what is the never-ending off-season. But Marvin, next week, this coming week is the 50th anniversary of Doc Ellis's crowning achievement.
Yes.
And next Monday on One More Word, we're going to be talking about that.
Yes, we are. And for our old listeners, you know this already. For our new listeners, we had a part of the show was a Doc Ellis Player of the Century of the week of the day, where if you jacked up something, it was what you did. You might not have made it to the list because of that. Some people it did, but it definitely got you noticed for all the wrong reasons. It's about Doc Ellis's no-hitter pitch while he was high on LSD. And so we're going to bring that
for those who don't know, that on GSI when we were on Hive Mind Radio turned into the Rob Ryan Person of the Week.
Rob Ryan Person of the Week, that's right. So there you go. So we thank you for hanging with us. We hope it was fun for you. It's always fun for us to get a chance to talk because we love each other and we love you too because you take the time to be with us. Again, reach out any kind of way you want to reach out, and we will reach back in a social distancing and hopefully legally non-creepy kind of way. You too. So again, Matthew Ryan, Marvin Williams, thank you much. Be safe and never let Jason Bourne borrow your car.